G'day, Pete Hodkinson here, joining you from the steps of Parliament. Whose world is it? The answer, I believe, lies in an understanding of collaborative responsibility and contribution. When we put up barriers between each other, be they disciplinary, spiritual, national, international, it becomes infinitely more difficult to form a cohesive society. And what we seem to be dealing with now is an increasing disengagement with that cohesion of society. Younger people being more disengaged with political process, right down to interpersonal issues. I mean, we're seeing hugging being banned from schools, for God's sakes. What are we teaching our children about positive interaction with others? We seem to be placing more weight on the fear of negative outcomes than we are on teaching the positive because it's perceived as more difficult. Now, I don't have a large background per se, but much of it is in tertiary education, so I wanted to talk a little bit about collaboration within education. The top results on Google, when you search university collaboration, are all about collaboration between individual universities and industrial partners. What does that say? For one, it reveals how business-oriented collaborative research is, but also how business-oriented tertiary education is, full stop. There's seemingly more value placed on the dollar value of educational outcomes than there is on the attainment and respect of the knowledge itself. There's huge culturally ingrained and unfortunately accepted misunderstanding, and ignorance in many cases, of the value of education. People are often pressured to go into fields for the looks, prestige, or cash flow. There's always the classic "you'll do it because it's what the family has always done" example. And whether it's the government picking winners through funding, whether it's parents of our generation predetermining career paths, there's a significant degree of choice being removed from people, particularly young people. And it's a cycle. The more it happens to you, the more likely you are to do it again. Which is why I'd really like to make the point that a lot of the world we live in isn't a virtue of the young or even the old. It's perhaps a virtue of the dead, a virtue of pre-recorded habitual behaviour. And to understand and take responsibility for our world, we first need to break a lot of dead cycles of thinking. So whose world is it? The young, the old, the dead, mine, yours, ours? Is it a question of Muslims versus Jews, Egypt versus Israel, Apple versus Microsoft, PS3 versus Xbox, religion versus science, men versus women, America versus everything, poor versus rich, war versus peace, young versus old, national versus global? Or is it just profit versus humanity? And do you know which side is yours? Because in its most menial capacity, ignorance to that question echoes into society as materialistic, advertising-driven consumerism, but in a larger capacity, into religious conflict, violent patriotism, and racial bias. Perhaps beyond everything else, to progress, we need to spend less time labelling the ideal world and a bit more time trying to be it. Thanks.